Welcome to the Do Zone, where entrepreneurs go to get things done. I'm your host, Josh Thomas. You can find me on all social media at JT Literally. Each week, I bring on experts from a variety of backgrounds to share their secrets on how to optimize performance so you can take massive action and crush your goals. The Do Zone is sponsored by Conversational Funnels, the new way to close deals in 2025 that doesn't rely on any of the old traditional methods everyone hates. We use this method to book 121 qualified sales calls in 10 days without any ad spend, outreach, or endless social posting. Download the free step-by-step blueprint that shows exactly how we did it at conversationalfunnels.com. Once again, that's conversationalfunnels.com. Today's guest is Adam Callinan. He is the founder of Pentane, the financial command center for profitable consumer brands. Pentane was born out of Adam's experience as the co-founder and CEO of Bottlekeeper, a consumer brand that grew profitably to $8 million in revenue in just 3 years without any employees or investors, and was later acquired as an 8-figure business with only 4 employees. Wow. Adam, welcome to the Do Zone. Tell us something you believe is the key to getting stuff done that most people wouldn't think of.
Thanks for having me, Josh. I won't do the typical, set your goals, do your priorities, put your phone in the drawer, which is something I actively do to get things done. I will say that it's really important to question everything and look at the way that someone else has built something or has told you how to build something as a nice data point, but not the only way to do it. And actually, Bottlekeeper was a really good example of executing on a concept of looking at the way that you would typically go and build something, turning it completely on its head, doing it a different way, which made the process much easier, much more fun, much more flexible.
Yeah, you're speaking my language here because we were talking just before we recorded here. I've recorded over 1,000 podcast episodes, and 99% of my peers who run a podcast are building their podcast for this invisible, anonymous audience out there that they will never meet. And
Sure.
8 years ago, I decided to flip that on its head and say, well, what if we built the podcast around the guest? What if we built it around the experience that you had with the guest himself? And that experience, by the way, happened to create a better experience for this audience, these people out there that may be listening to this show, because I'm not worried about what they're thinking or what they're worried about. I'm worried about the conversation that's happening right here, flipping the entire thing upside down. And it's a lot more fun and you get a better quality product.
It's a great example.
And so I'm curious, let's get tactical. I know you like
Yeah,
getting tactical.
I
I
do.
want to understand, how do you grow a company to $8 million with 0 employees, 0 investors, and you're not selling crack?
Never sold crack. We did sell beer products for a decade, but it starts really with part of it comes from scar tissue from the company before that was big and heavy and hard to move and manage. And part of it comes from sort of my own personal challenge with being told that something needs to be done a certain way. At the time that we started Bottle Keepers in 2013, which is not really much different from now, or certainly not over the last couple of years, it was really easy to raise capital. The thing you do is you go and you raise a seed round, then you go hire a bunch of people, and then you open an office, and then you hit some revenue milestone, then you go raise your series A or D or whatever. I mean, none of the things even really matter what they call them anymore. And that was how you build a business. And I just vehemently disagreed with that. I thought that sounded like a terrible way to build a business where you're completely dependent on other people's capital and other people's time and energy and intellectual bandwidth and capacity to learn and grow alongside you. And so I just wanted to do it on my own. We looked at the business my cousin and I started, and I said, yes, let's go do it. I will do it with you. We'll go try this thing, but I want to build it in a way that does not require me to manage a person ever. And so when you put that stake in the ground early on, it forces you to solve problems a different way. The result of which is we built an extremely lean company. And because we had no employees, no office, really like no operating expenses, no fixed expenses. We were able to invest all of the money the business was making back into growing the business, which is how it went from 0 to 8 million in 3 years.
And so I'm curious, what were you selling that required no human fulfillment whatsoever?
So the company was called Bottlekeeper. My cousin had invented this. It was a beer product. It was basically, actually, keep getting asked about this. So here's actually our original prototype. It's a stainless steel bottle that we bice script to a table and hacksawed it in half and stuffed it with like cheap neoprene koozie.
Okay.
And your beer bottle would fit inside of it. So this is literally our original.
Okay. Got
I
it.
just happen to have on my desk right now.
I see.
But we made a fancy version of it and made a lot of fancy versions of it over the almost decade we ran the company. And we just did everything. Like we split the company in half. Matt was responsible for the product fulfillment and overseeing the manufacturing and all that stuff, or finance stuff. And I was responsible for everything on the front end. So I had to learn how to build a website. I wrote all the website copy. I took all the pictures, did all the videos, did all the emails, did all the paid media, all the social media. I mean, I literally ran all the customer service, every single position that a consumer would touch, I ran. So I had to learn to do those things, which I enjoyed doing. I like learning how to do that stuff. So. And we took and scaled that, to basically as far as we could scale it. And at about 8 million in revenue in 2016 was too far. And the wheels on the wagon started to wobble a little bit. So we did end up, we did start hiring a small team, but even as you mentioned at acquisition, we only had 4 people.
So I'm curious. So it sounds like you had some sort of a manufacturer or something that was just building and shipping these things for you, and you just didn't need to have anybody involved. Was it like a drop shipping? Like you had a manufacturer and then it was being drop shipped?
No, we had a manufacturer. We were importing the product into the US. It was ending up in Phoenix, Arizona, where my cousin lived. And he had a different business that had some extra warehouse space. So we warehoused the product there, and he was physically shipping the product until there was too many orders to physically ship.
Wow.
So then we went into we went into a 3PL and outsourced shipping fulfillment operator. But by the time, in hindsight, all these things are great lessons in hindsight. You didn't really plan for any of them. In hindsight, by the time we went into that 3PL, we were big enough to where we had leverage and we were an important client for the 3PL, as opposed to when you're a startup,
where they
you don't have a whole lot of pull in that situation.
Yeah. But that's fascinating. And I love the idea that you took it and flipped it over on its head and said, no, I don't want to manage a person. Like just that idea alone, I think is huge. And it's something that most of us would have never thought of. Like, I want to build this where I don't have to manage a single person. But let's talk about is there anything that you would change? Like going back, the tactical approach, everything that you did. Obviously, you ran the leanest possible route. But were there a couple of spaces where maybe you wished that there was just a little bit of fat, or not?
Well, let me clarify that there was a point at which we got fat. Like I violated my own principles in 2019. It was on the back of, we were on Shark Tank in 2018. We were already way too big to be on Shark Tank. We were like a $10 million a year business. So, but we ended up on Shark Tank and it was an incredible experience. And we had this big sales pop that you expect to happen in 2019. I did the thing that I talk about now. I spend a huge amount of time talking about not doing, which is you go and hire. They added on 3 or 4 people, opened an awesome office in Southern California with, space to grow into, and did all those things. And then, as happens in many businesses, you sort of go through these cycles. If you go and spend that money, you go and add that weight into the business, and you don't understand clearly how the revenue and the marginal components of the revenue have to keep track and have to pace in order to pay for those things, you go from being a very profitable business to being a very not profitable business. And that happens relatively quickly. And so we went through that cycle and then had to peel it all back and get rid of the fancy office. And then obviously COVID happened and that all upset the world. But, we went through that correction and became a much healthier company again and went on to continue to grow and do bigger, better things before we got acquired. So I did get to see what that felt like, and it was nice, but it wasn't smart. I mean, it wasn't healthy. It wasn't good, and we paid for it.
Yeah. And it's interesting that as human beings, we got to have that serotonin boost of one-upping and being the alpha human or whatever. And then we get there and we realize like, oh, that's it. I didn't need
It's
any of this
wild.
stuff.
Yeah. And it's, I was living in Southern California at the time, and, we were getting declined from like big publications for PR stuff. And I was getting declined from joining some, like YPO business group things because, we were doing tens of millions of dollars a year in revenue because we didn't have enough employees. Like that was like a caveat to not being able to do things and going to the, networking things. And the first question everybody asks is like, how many employees do you have? It's like, oh, we have 4. And immediately it's like, oh, you're nothing. It's like, buddy, we're like, yeah, we like netted $3 million last year and you're hemorrhaging money. And it's such a backwards upside down system.
Yeah, but it's not
So
sexy though.
yeah, I know, but it does, after a while, it does get to you. And I'm as susceptible to that as anybody.
Yeah.
And so we decided to go learn the lesson the hard way and go back to reset.
So you learned all these lessons.
Yeah.
Now, what are you doing to apply those lessons with your new venture?
So Pentane comes directly from that experience operating Bottlekeeper. It is, there are some things that we did, a lot of things that we did really bad, and we tried to burn it to the ground 1,000 times at Bottlekeeper. And there are a handful of things that we did really, really well. Unfortunately, those really, really wells outweighed the really, really bads. One of the things that we did really well is that we deeply understood the math and financials to intentionally operate a profitable business. So I mean that very seriously. Like the answer to being profitable is a math question, but we don't use math. We use emotion to answer the profitability, and we just sort of throw spaghetti against the wall and hope it sticks. And so we built systems at Bottlekeeper that helped us have clarity into how to operate the business in a profitable way, and what the result was going to be from adding team members, and where our conversion rate needed to go if we were going to do a sale, like all these systems. And we were just solving our own problems. But post-acquisition, I helped some companies that we had invested in and realized that they had the same problem. They didn't have the transparency on how to operate really intentionally with respect to the bottom line, and which is the goal of the business in the big scheme, generally speaking. So Pentane comes from that experience. It is the foundation of that is the underlying math that we used at Bottlekeeper that is now dramatically better in a command center and guidance system, where you as the operator can pulls in all your data and your expense stuff and your revenue and adds all the stuff via API automatically. And you can say, my primary objective is to get to a 10% net margin, and the system will tell you exactly how to do it. Like, it's not going to say, here's some numbers, figure it out. It literally says, decrease your expenses by this, or increase your prices by this, or increase your conversion rate by this, or move your ad spend to $72,000 at a 2.9 return on ad spend. And you can go in and manipulate all those numbers, because obviously we don't live in an either or world. You need to be able to probably do some of all those things. So it is the product of that experience.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so really what it does is it gives you a forensic view of your budgeting, especially your budgeting projections of, hey, I want to be here. Great. I want to be here by this time. Do these things and you'll get there, like objectively.
Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah. Much needed for sure. And so where can we go to learn a little bit more about this, and who is it really a good fit for?
You can go to pentane.com. I'm talking a little bit about it on LinkedIn and doing whatever I can to help other early stage operators answer difficult questions. Who it's for, I mean, the math is the same, whether it's ExxonMobil or a landscape company or a hairdresser or an e-commerce business. Who we are targeting is consumer brands under 20 million in revenue. That's where we're spending time. Those are the businesses that I believe I can be the most helpful. The system can be the most helpful to. So if you're in that space and could use the clarity and guidance, you can find that at pentane.com.
Very good. Hey, we're going to wrap from here. Thanks so much to our guest, Adam Callinan, for coming on and sharing a little bit of wisdom about how he gets stuff done and how he built an $8 million company with no employees. And also, I just want to note, in case I didn't get to mention it here earlier in the episode, Adam is a self-professed massive nerd and proud of it. He wanted to make sure that that was added on.
Nah, it's absolutely true.
Hey, so we're gonna, if you lost my train of thought here, there we go. Hey, if you are interested in learning more about Pentane, you can go to pentane.com, whether you are a $20 million delight of the Silicon Valley or you're a landscaper in Austin, Texas. Pentane.com is a great place to go and get a forensic analysis of what you need to do to get to wherever you need to go. Whether you're on your morning commute, in the gym, or somewhere out in the field, snap a selfie, tag me at JT Literally. Show me what you do while you're in the do zone. One more time, if you want to stuff your calendar with qualified, motivated, ideal clients who want what you have, download the Conversational Funnels Blueprint for free at conversationalfunnels.com. That's it. Let's get to work. Hey, thanks for listening to the Do Zone podcast. If you're running a service-based business that's looking to grow this year, let's talk about how we can slingshot you into momentum with a quick injection of cash and sales. Our clients typically see results in as little as 7 days. To learn more about what we do, you could go to factor1.io. Once again, that's factor1.io. We'll see you next time.